welcome. It's a big honor to have you here. I really, really appreciate it. As an anarcho-capitalist, there are a few names that like you hear all of the time. Friedman, Mises, Rothbard, Hoppe, and yours, Dr. Walter Block, yours is one of them. I've read quite a few of your pieces. I haven't read some of your more controversial books, but I have read a lot of your pieces, and I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to the audience. I know we got a little bit of a late start. I'm not sure how much time you have. I have all in the time of the world. The longer, the better for me, but however much time you have, we'll try and work within that framework as well.
I've got an hour until 6 o'clock. It's now 5:15 my time. I'm Walter Block. I'm a libertarian and an economist, and I work at Loyola University, New Orleans. And my main claim to fame is that I once shook the hand of Ludwig von Mises, and I played chess with Hayek.
Those are pretty amazing claims.
And I was a friend of Murray Rothbard.
Okay, but the real question is how badly did you lose to Hayek?
I beat him.
Did you?
My usual way of playing chess is I say, look over there, and he looks over there, and I grab his queen, and then we continue to play, and I beat him.
Well played, sir.
Well played. All right, so we are a little bit stretched for time, so I kind of want to do kind of a bit of a lightning round and a couple of questions about Austrian economics, and then really get to the crux of the conversation I want to talk with you about was evictionism. So we'll try and speed this process up a little bit. For anybody here that is not an ANCAP or, really familiar with economics from a libertarian perspective, such as neoclassical or Austrian economics, could you give like what it is that you mean when you say Austrian economics, and why should people believe in Austrian economics and methodological individualism and things like that when looking at economics, as opposed to kind of like what we're taught from the experts, if you will, today?
Well, Austrian economics got nothing to do with the economics of country Austria. Rather, it's because the creators of it, Menger, Bombewerk, Mises, Hayek, all happen to live in Austria. It's similar to the Chicago School of Economics, got nothing to do with the economics of the city Chicago. It's just that Milton Friedman and George Stigler and Gary Becker were there. What is the unique thing about Austrian economics? To me, the unique thing is praxeology. So what's praxeology? Praxeology is the view that economics is not an empirical science. It's a matter of pure logic. We don't have to test hypotheses, or rather there are some hypotheses or some laws that we don't have to test that are apodictically necessarily true. For example, Scott, you bought that lovely blue shirt and you paid $20 for it. I, as an Austrian economist, don't have to test the following claim, but I know it to be necessarily true. Namely, at the time you bought that, you valued it at more than 20. The guy who sold it to you valued it less than 20. Let's say you valued it at 25. You made a $5 profit. Let's say he valued it 12. He made an $8 profit. So a voluntary trade is mutually beneficial, period. You don't have to test that. You know it's true if you understand the English language. Now, it might be later that you regret this ex post. He might regret it, who knows? Usually you buy a shirt, you don't regret it afterward. But ex ante, at the time that you made that agreement, you were trying to improve your utility, your economic welfare, and was the same thing for the guy who sold you that shirt. Now, for this, we Austrians are roundly condemned as cultists, religious fanatics. Why? Because we don't believe in empirical testing. That is, we don't believe in empirical testing on some economic laws, like that one, that voluntary trade is mutually beneficial in the ex ante sense. Now, there are other things we believe you have to test, like if I don't know, if the government increases the money supply by 1%, we know that other things equal, prices will rise, but we don't know by how much, so we have to test it. So we do believe in empirical testing also, but we also believe in economic law. And because of that, we are roundly condemned. Now, it just so happens that Austrians, we also don't believe much in interpersonal comparisons of utility. So we can't say who gained more utility, you or the guy who sold you that shirt. We can only say you both gained. Whereas the mainstream, they believe in antitrust, and they believe even free market people like the Chicago School believe in antitrust, and other. And they believe that if Michael, I'm very rich, and the government forces me to give you $100, you're very poor. They believe that I will lose less utils than you will gain, and therefore it's justified to have the welfare. So even the Chicago School, the so-called free enterprises, believe in this nonsense, whereas Austrians who don't believe in interpersonal comparative utility or in, they have to test everything, we are roundly condemned in the mainstream economics profession.
Well, all I want to say to that is two things. One, that was an amazing summary. I couldn't put it more precisely myself. And second, my grandmother actually bought this shirt and gave it to me. And this is the gift economy shown. And so checkmate, communism is real. The gift economy is superior. But jokes aside, I recently had a debate with two people with masters in economics, other streamers, lefty guys, about inflation. And one of the things that I really struggled to answer, because despite being an ANCAP, believe it or not, cultural issues are my strong point. Someone that's educated in psychology and sociology, economics is a little bit of a weak link for me. And we were talking about, we were debating the inflation, and they made this really good argument, or at least from their side, that, well, sometimes tax cuts can be deflationary, sometimes they can be inflationary, etc. And I tried to say, we'll pause. All that you've done is made a historical fact. You've said that at one point in time, this occurred, and that is a historical fact. But you're attempting to use empiricism to understand a concept that I don't think we can actually understand in that way. And they were like, oh, well, you're cherry picking what Austrians say. Austrians would actually have a better argument. They kept trying to dismiss what I was saying. And I was saying, no, you've established a historical fact, and that's cool. But what I'm trying to do is use praxeology and logic to say that if you increase the money supply without an increase, at the very minimum, even giving the Keynesians their due, GDP, and without increasing population or transactions or the velocity of money, or even if we want to use all of your terms, that you're going to have inflation. And they were like, well, that's not necessarily true because this one time it didn't. And I'm like, you can't do that. So was I wrong in saying that? Or, and of course, I may be mischaracterizing my opponent or have my own personal bias, but what would be your response to something about talking about inflation in that way? Or your general thoughts on the inflation that's coming and here?
Well, there are two definitions of inflation. One is increase in the money stock.
Mm-hmm. Monetary inflation.
By that definition, if the government increases the money stock, there'll be inflation definitionally. Another sense of inflation is prices rise. Well, I think whenever prices rise, it's due to, historically, due to money being increased, but it need not be government. It could be new discovery of gold or something. On the other hand, the government increases the money stock by a nickel, and during that time, we have a great increase in productivity. We'll have price decreases. So you really can't say. It depends upon how much they increase the money stock and how much productivity is increasing. Like right now, Biden is saying, well, the reason we're having price rises is because we're having less productivity because of the Ukraine war. It's conceivable that he's right. It's an empirical issue. I think praxeologically we can't say he's wrong. I think he's wrong as a matter of empirical matter, but I think praxeologically we can't say he's wrong, because whether prices will rise or not is sort of like a race between how much money there is in circulation and how many goods and services there are. And if the goods and services increase or decrease radically, we'll have price rises even with the same amount of money in circulation.
Right. Yeah, no, fair enough. That's what I should have said, Chad. That's what I should have said. But moving on, the real reason we got you here today. Yeah, I know. I couldn't fix it. It's fine. People that donate to the PayPal have seen it anyways. There's a billion Michael Scotts in the world. Good luck. That being said, so the real reason we got you on was, with Roe v. Wade kind of being overturned in the Supreme Court, there's never been, I think, a better moment for us to push forward the idea of evictionism, because I've always thought, I'm an evictionist myself, though maybe we have some differences. I don't know. Maybe we can pull those apart. But I think the idea of evictionism philosophically is the only position that I've heard, apart from departurism, but I see issues with it, obviously, that maintains a woman's right to choose, as well as maintains the fact that abortion is indeed murder. And I figured if I'm going to keep talking, I'm going to keep screaming at all these lefties on Twitch about it, why not reach out to the guy? I mean, you and Roy came up with evictionism together, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you're basically the purveyor. I've read that you came up with this idea with one other person, but I've only ever heard you argue about it.
Who is this other person?
I've seen on Wikipedia it credits somebody else along with you, but I've yet to see them write anything about it. From what I understand, it's just you, but there are reports that somebody else. So I wanted to ask if you came up with this with another person, or if it was just you, right?
As far as I know, it's I created it. I don't know of any other person. There are people who agree with me, but I wrote about it first, and I think I don't think anyone else should be credited with this idea.
Hell yeah, I love it. So
it credits Roy Whitehead as the person who helped you.
Roy Whitehead is a co-author of mine. Yeah, well, I wouldn't credit him with it because the article that I wrote with him was maybe 10 years after I first started writing it.
Okay.
So I don't remember.
As we know, boys, never fully trust Wikipedia.
Well, Roy was a co-author of mine in writing about this, and I forget whether I have other co-authors who've also co-authored with me on this issue. I think I do. I think Bob McGee also is another co-author, but I forget when the Roy Whitehead, Walter Block article came out, but it was 10, 15, 20 years after I first started it. So
could you briefly explain to the normie, right? Like, I think both you and I are really deeply aware of it, but I think you're the best person to give a brief description of what evictionism is.
Well, evictionism, can't even pronounce it. Evictionism is a compromise, a principled compromise between the pro-life and the pro-choice positions. Libertarians, as well as the general public, diverge on that issue. For example, you can't get two more highly credentialed leaders of libertarianism than Murray Rothbard and Ron Paul. And yet the two of them have opposite views. Murray Rothbard is pro-choice. Ron Paul is pro-life. So what do I mean by principled compromise? Well, if I say 2 + 2 is 4, and you say 2 + 2 is 6, well, a compromise would be 2 + 2 is 5, but it's not a principled compromise because you can't deduce 2 + 2 = 5 from anything else. It's just a compromise, but it's not a principled one. And I have what I think is a principled compromise between pro-life and pro-choice. Pro-life says you cannot. Well, what is abortion? What abortion is really two things. Abortion is killing the fetus and evicting the fetus from the womb. And the pro-life people say you can't do either. The pro-choice people say you can do both. And I say you can do just one, but not the other. Namely, you can evict, but you can't kill. Okay, so how do I justify that? Well, we start off with the question of when does life start? And there are 3 possibilities, either with birth or with the fertilized egg or somewhere in between. Some people say it's when the heartbeat starts. That's the Jewish view of when life starts, when the heartbeat starts. But I don't really see any gigantic difference between the fetus 1 second before the heart beats and 1 second after. I say heart schmart, who cares about the heart? There are other things more important than the heart. And just because you have a heartbeat doesn't mean you're a human being. And when your heart isn't working, you're not a human being. If somebody has a heart attack, God forbid, and their heart stops beating, they're still a human being. So we're now narrowing it down to either birth or fertilized egg. And I choose fertilized egg because birth is just a change of address. I mean, the baby 15 minutes before the baby leaves the womb and 15 minutes after the baby is outside of the mother's body, it's the same baby. I mean, you know, you and I 15 minutes ago or a half hour ago were roughly the same as we are now. Well, it's the same for the baby, but there's a gigantic difference between when the sperm hits the egg and when the sperm doesn't hit the egg. Gigantic difference, because a sperm alone will not create a human being. An egg alone will not create a human being, but a sperm in an egg will be a human being, not create a human being, but be a human being. Okay, so the baby, human life starts at fertilized egg state, and young people at that stage have every right that any other human being has, namely the right not to be murdered. Okay, so let's take the following scenario. A woman is walking down the street. She gets grabbed, she gets raped, she gets impregnated, and now there is a person growing inside of her. Well, what do we think of them apples? What I think of them apples is that the father, the rapist, is a criminal and ought to be punished to the full extent of the law. But the baby is innocent. The baby who is a product of rape is as innocent as any other baby. They're all equally innocent. They all equally have a right not to be murdered. However, baby who is inside the woman's body, and the question is, who owns that woman's body? Well, the answer is the woman. She owns her body. No question about that. So what do we think of a baby, a young person who's inside of her? Well, we think of him as a trespasser, an innocent trespasser, but a trespasser. Well, Scott, suppose I trespass in your house. And, you see me there and you say, please leave. Do you have a right to shoot me? Certainly not if I'm an innocent trespasser. Let's say that somebody drugged me and put me in your living room, and now I'm sitting in your living room just coming out of my drug stupor. Well, it'd be nice if you kept me there for 9 months, or it'd be nice if you were nice to me. But as a libertarian, we believe that you only have negative obligations, not positive obligations.
Exactly.
And you can evict me, but not kill me. Well, I think it's the same relationship between the raped mother and her innocent trespassing fetus. She has a right to evict or eject that person from her body because that little person is a trespasser. Now, it just so happens that in the first 6 months of her pregnancy, if you evict that baby will die because the baby is not viable until the third trimester.
Well, not anymore,
so,
but yes.
Well, roughly.
Viability is 24 weeks now.
Well, it keeps changing. It keeps moving with
with technology,
with medical technology, but it used to be the last trimester, which is, I don't know, how many weeks is that? 12 weeks or 13 weeks, something like that. So if we adopt evictionism, roughly 1/3 or 40% of all babies are saved because the mother will be precluded from killing that baby. And the baby will be viable outside the womb. So that would be the pro-life part of evictionism. On the other hand, in the first 2 trimesters, roughly, the baby will die, and that's the pro-choice position. So it's a compromised, compromise. It's a principled compromise because it's based on private property rights. And as medical technology improves, as you said, the date of viability will come earlier and earlier. And so that would change based on medical technology. But the philosophical deontological principles would be invariant to medical technology.
So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things. Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to pick at, because while I really appreciate your summarization, it's great. There's some hangups, not with your logic per se, but I think some definitional things I'd like to pick at, because I really want to I really want to strengthen this argument. One of the things that I noticed, especially with your debate with Carrie Baldwin, right, is I thought the debate was going to be really around the basis of the implicit contract. And what it seems like the debate really focused more on was kind of back a little bit, which confused me because I thought it would be settled, which is this definition of what is and isn't a trespasser. And even in the language that you use currently, seems like your conception of a trespasser is an unwanted baby, right? Like if the baby is wanted, it's not a trespasser, right? And so like I think I keep hearing like, oh well, it's a trespasser, and I think I want to make it clear to the audience, right, that what we're really saying is that it's not a trespasser until it's been uninvited, right? Like if it's invited, if implicitly I want to keep it, then it's not a trespasser. The moment it's not a trespasser, or sorry, it's not invited, it is a trespasser, and that is even though it's an innocent trespass under natural law, that is a criminal activity to be on someone's private property uninvited. But I don't know that you need it, but I do think there's an implicit invitation. So one of the thought ideas that I've come up with for this is two examples of thinking about it like your private property. And so one of the things that I talk about in terms of the implicit contract and trespass is like the open door, right? So if I have a home and I leave my front door open, that's kind of an implicit invitation to people to come in, right? Which I would say is very similar to pregnancy or to sex, right? It's like your door was open or your legs were open, right? But if a robber or someone comes into my home, regardless of whether or not I left my door open, if they're in my home and I'm like, hey, I don't want you here, right? They're a trespasser. They may have had like a genuine innocent reason to be there because your front door was open. Maybe they thought there was a crime taking place. Maybe they thought you were in danger. Maybe they thought there was a house party going on. It was an open invitation. Whatever they thought, now they've been informed that they're no longer here. What do you think about that analogy and in better understanding the concept of why the baby is a trespasser once the invitation is revoked?
Well, I think you're making an extremely important point. And so far, what I did is I talked about the rape victim. And there it's clear that that baby is a trespass. She never came within a million miles of inviting anything because she was brutalized. She was raped. Okay, now let's take the case of voluntary sexual intercourse. And let's not complicate it by saying, well, you know, the condom broke or something like that. Let's suppose that she intended to have a baby. Mm-hmm. And now she's changed her mind after a month or two of being pregnant. So the question comes, did she invite the baby? And if she invited the baby, well, then, if I invite you on my airplane and now we're at 30,000 feet, it would be a little harsh of me to say, okay, get out. And you say, well, how about a parachute? I say, forget the parachute. You're a trespasser. Get out. No, there's an implicit contract that if I invite you on my plane, I'm going to land you. And if I invite you on my boat.
Yeah, an implicit safe harbor contract. Yeah.
Yeah, and now the boat is 50 miles from the shore and you can't swim 50 miles. I just can't say go away and swim the shore. I have to land you back on the land. So the question is, did the woman who engages in voluntary sexual intercourse and wants to have a baby, did she invite the baby in? And the answer is no. Paradoxically, no, she did not invite the baby in because remember, what does the baby consist of? That's it. In order for there to be an invitation, there has to be an invitor and an invitee. Now, look, if there's a host mother, if a couple can't conceive and the husband puts a sperm into the host mother, whether through sexual intercourse
like a surrogate mother, we'll just say.
A surrogate mother. Well, now there's an invitation. That woman cannot evict that baby because she's contractually obligated to keep that baby if she was paid $100,000 or whatever she was paid. So that evictionism wouldn't work. However, let's take the ordinary case where there's no host mother and there's just a man and a woman and the woman wants to get pregnant and her husband or lover impregnates her. Was there an invitation? No. Because for there to be an invitation, there has to be an inviter and an invitee. And did the mother invite not the husband or the father of the child, but did she invite the baby in by having sex? The answer is no, because remember, the baby doesn't exist until the sperm hits the egg. How long does it take for the sperm to hit the egg? Anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes is the usual thing, but it could be as long as 5 days under certain circumstances, because the egg can stay there for 5 days and the sperm, takes its own time. So the answer is, even under voluntary sexual intercourse, there was no invitation. So, I mean, if there's an invitation, can you change your mind? That's a complicated issue. I mean, if you invite me for dinner and we have a nice dinner and now it's 10 o'clock and you start looking at your watch as a hint for me to leave, and I say, well, I'm staying 9 months. Well, that's a problem. That's a gray area. How long do you have to keep me if there's an invitation? But there was no invitation. The host mother, yes, there was an invitation. But the ordinary sexual intercourse, there was no invitation. So whether she's raped or she's pregnant because of voluntary sexual intercourse, there's no invitation. And therefore, we come back to evictionism. Yes, she can evict, but no, she can't kill. Now, there is an exception. I mean, if the baby is such that the only way to the baby, I forget who it was, Judith Jarvis Thompson had this exploding baby thing. The baby gets bigger and bigger and is going to kill the mother. Or if for some reason there's a medical reason.
Yeah, there's like an ectopic pregnancy or something, right? Like it's going to kill the mother. The baby's not going to come to term.
Right. Then she can not only evict, but kill. In self-defense. But if there's nothing like that, then evictionism stands. It stands against all criticisms of it, including the very powerful one that you mentioned of the invitation.
So I guess moving forward, because I really want to strengthen this from the audience and everything, because I really do believe in it. But one of the things that I think was an interesting concept is, can you evict someone, an innocent trespasser, from your home into a blizzard that is presumably likely to kill them?
Yeah. Well, I would say that if we take libertarianism very strictly, you can evict someone whenever you want. Now, let's forget about the invitation. Suppose that I'm there and somebody else drugged me and put me in. I'm an innocent trespasser, right? Do you have to keep me until the blizzard is over? Well, if you believe in positive obligations, then you do. But we libertarians don't believe in positive obligations. We only believe in negative obligations. You have an obligation not to murder me, not to steal from me, not to kidnap me. That's it. You don't have an obligation to save my life. Now, paradoxically, people will say, well, libertarianism is cruel and heartless and nasty.
This is an issue of, I want to make it very clear to the audience, because a lot of them are not libertarians. I have a lot of paleo libs or right wingers in my audience as well. My free ending will end in 10 minutes. What? All right. What? Didn't realize that was a thing. But
see, a lot of people think that libertarianism is callous, but I think from a pragmatic point of view, where will more lives be saved if we adopt libertarianism or if we don't? I think it's very clear. There are very few cases where you have to eject somebody into a blizzard. Whereas if we adopt libertarianism, we're going to save a lot more lives than if we adopt this idea that we're our brother's keeper and we have to have welfare and you're obligated to help other people. No, paradoxically, Adam Smith wrote this book, The Wealth of Nations. And he asked, why are some nations wealthy and other nations are not? And with a few exceptions, his correct answer was, freedom will bring wealth, and freedom will bring prosperity, and freedom will bring longevity, and freedom will save lives. So don't think, you non-libertarians, that libertarianism is callous and cruel because we are not obligated to save other people. Because paradoxically, you'll save more people through libertarianism than any other way. So to answer your question, yes, blizzard schmizzard, I don't want you in my house and there's a blizzard out there and you're going to die from it. Too bad.
So
because we believe in private property rights.
No, I agree with you. I guess the strongest argument I think that I've seen against evictionism, which I know that you responded to some degree against, I think it was Sean Parr when he brought up, I think the title of it was like, departurism is not libertarian. It was a bit scathing. But one of the things that I think maybe kind of came back to haunt you a little bit was your your writings on the gentleness principle, right? And in it, interrupt me if I'm mischaracterizing, but the idea of the gentleness principle is that you should use the most nonviolent means to stop a crime from occurring, so that you're not in any so you're not accidentally in any violation of the non-aggression principle, right? Because despite someone being, let's say, an aggressor and creating some form of crime, if someone else commits such an egregious and overreaction to that crime, then you're really the aggressor in that situation. So, for example, someone comes onto your property with an old lady comes onto your property, slightly onto your grass, past your no trespassing sign because she has dementia and she doesn't know where she is. And then you like shoot her 15 times with your gun because like she accidentally stumbled onto your property, right? Like you're not following the gentleness principle. Like you need to be like, hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. Recognize what's going on. Be like, okay, go that way, like, et cetera, et cetera. So, one of the things that I think, I want to quote you here from part 4, child abuse, custody, and punishment in A Rational Theory of the Rights of Children. You say, quote, any scarring, maiming, mutation, or other disfigurement which deprives a child of his innate body and was suffered as a result of his actions taken against him by an adult likewise qualifies as damage, right? And that's going beyond neglect or forestalling guardianship. How do you make that argument that intentionally removing a child that will 100% cause damage to the body, will 100% harm the child, isn't more than just neglect or forestalling of guardianship? How is that not child abuse in the way that you talk about children's rights?
I think that's a very good argument, and I'm glad you brought it up. Mm-hmm. The gentleness thing is only compatible with rights. Let's say the mother is in her 9th month and the baby is due in 2 weeks or something like that, and the baby is perfectly viable outside the womb. And the mother wants to evict. And there are 2 ways to evict. One is gentle, where the baby is fine. The other is the way they do now with partial birth abortion. They sort of pull the baby apart and drag him out in 10 pieces.
Yeah, little tap in the central nervous system to break its skull wide open and rip it apart and then suction it out.
That's really despicable.
Yeah,
that's disgusting.
It's murder.
And murder, and that's not gentle at all. So given we're in the 3rd trimester or in the last 40% of the pregnancy or whatever it is, and the baby is perfectly viable and the mother wants to evict, she is obligated to do it in the gentlest manner possible. Mm-hmm. Now, look, there are some feminists who say, especially with rape, but even involuntary sexual intercourse, what they'll say is, look, I don't want that man's child to live because that man is despicable. And right. In the case of I can
or the psychological harm of his legacy and potential biological right. essentialist argument that the child might grow up to be a rapist being to them.
Yeah. The woman, in the case of the rapist, I can readily understand. She is saying, I don't want that man's progeny to live. And even in the case of voluntary sexual intercourse, the woman might now want to divorce the father of if she's married, or maybe she hates the father and she doesn't want that baby to live. And I say the woman has no right to do that. She only has a right to evict. She doesn't have a right. I mean, I can empathize in the case of rape. She doesn't want the rapist child to live. I can understand that, but the baby is innocent. So yes. She's obligated to remove the baby or evict the baby or eject the baby in the gentlest manner possible, but compatible with evicting. So in the case of the snowstorm, whether it's a baby or an adult, there is no gentle way to do it. So the gentleness that Parr comes up with is irrelevant. See, what Parr is saying is, look, Block, you favor gentleness of removal. Well, the most gentle way to remove is in 9 months with an ordinary birth. Mm-hmm. And I say, but that's not removal. That's not eviction. You don't have that obligation. You can't turn gentleness into a rejection of evictionism. And Parr tries to do that, and I try to show why he's wrong.
So Walter Block, I have the free version of Zoom. Would you be willing to redo the Zoom real quick via email? Because I've only got 3 minutes left remaining on the Zoom. That's why I was trying to do it over Discord. Would you be willing to do that real quick for the last 10 minutes?
Sure.
I deeply appreciate it. I'm going to set up another Zoom as quickly as possible because there's one really good question I'd like, and then like a couple of quick questions from the audience. I really do appreciate your time, and I'm sorry for the scuffed way and the technical errors that we had. So I'll be right back. All right. I will edit this out if you don't mind, Walter. I will make sure the full interview is up, but I will edit out the technical difficulties.
Good.
So the last question I wanted to ask you is something that I'm not per se a challenge, but like I said, I keep wanting to strengthen the argument of evictionism. And so I kind of came up with something that was a little bit of a retort to what you had said earlier, though it might be parallel thinking with what others have said before. And so I want you to maybe pick apart why this logic is wrong, because I think departurists will use this, or maybe pro-life people, but probably not. So number one, gentleness principle should be followed to stop crime. Number two, gentleness principle can change the time to stop a crime that would be hastened by a swift, violent response. So in the example of the older lady with dementia that stumbles onto my property, I could just shoot her and that would instantly resolve the crime, or I could take the time to try and slowly evict her, try and get her to understand that she's not where she's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. And so number three, if both 1 and 2, or if you prefer A and B, if both A and B are correct, could the departurist argue that the gentleness principle requires the maintenance of the fetus until developed enough for departure, which is to say, developed enough that you could evict into an artificial womb or evict into a surrogate mother, and then you have to attempt to find those places to evict in such a way that wouldn't necessarily lead to their death. Why is the logic of that wrong?
The reason that the logic of that is wrong is because of time. You don't have to wait around to get that little old lady off your property. Mm-hmm. Look, there was this case where a police woman was convicted of a crime because she had 2 guns, one with a bullet, what do you call it, a lead bullet in it, and another with a rubber bullet, or a less vicious way of stopping the criminal. And she meant to shoot the rubber bullet. I'm not sure if it was a rubber bullet or maybe taser or something like that.
It was the taser. You're talking about in the car?
She said taser.
She said taser, accidentally brought out her handgun and shot the individual.
Right. But the timing would be about the same. Namely, whichever gun she shot him with, whether it was a rubber bullet or a taser or a lead bullet, the timing would be invariant. Namely, the guy would stop right then and there. Now, look, if somebody's coming at you with a knife and yelling, "I'm going to kill you," and you have 2 weapons, one, a weapon that'll stop him immediately, and another weapon that'll stop him in 10 seconds, are you obligated to use the weapon that'll stop him in 10 seconds? No, that's crazy. On the other hand, if you have 2 weapons that will stop him equally well, immediately, or in the same time dimension, 2 seconds or whatever it is, mm-hmm. then you're obligated to use the gentle way. But you're not obligated to use one that'll wait 10 seconds, and in 10 seconds, the guy is going to be at your throat with his knife. So again, I reject Sean Parr, and I reject gentleness, and I reject departurism as a way of sneaking out from under the correct view of evictionism. You don't have to wait around with that old lady. Now, look, it's not nice, an old lady who's got dementia or a little kid, but you don't have to wait in time. What you do have to do is be gentle. Now, if you have 2 ways of stopping the little old lady, one with a bullet and the other with a rubber gun or a taser or a net or something that'll cut her off at the same time, then you're obligated to use the gentle manner possible. But you don't have to wait around and twiddle your thumbs. And that's the whole point of Sean Parr. And I don't see why you have to wait around. And
so what you're saying is that time in locus, in a small example, the difference between 2 seconds and 4 seconds is not a meaningful distinction. But when you're talking about, let's say, 6 months, you're talking about delaying someone's right to their own bodily autonomy in the name of the gentleness principle.
I'm not really saying that.
I'm
What
saying,
I'm saying,
okay, I'm sorry.
I'm saying 2 seconds matters.
Oh,
Look,
okay.
if there's a guy coming at you with a knife and you have 2 ways of stopping him, and he's only 10 feet away from you, so in 2 seconds he can get you. And you can get him immediately or you get him after 2 seconds. You don't have to wait around for 2 seconds. On the other hand, if you have 2 ways of stopping him at the same amount of time, namely right away, and one will kill him, and the other will just put him out of put him out of business. Well, then you're obligated to put him out of business in the gentlest manner possible, because we value life, and maybe he's deranged, maybe he's drugged, maybe he's really innocent. Who knows? Maybe somebody else kidnapped him and told him to come at you with a knife, and he's really innocent in a sense because he's under this kidnapping mesmerism or something. So you don't have to wait 2 seconds, but you do have to be gentle if you can save your life equally well.
Fair enough. You said you go a couple more minutes. I'm done with the questions that I kind of wanted to really grind into evictionism, because here on the channel, we've watched a lot of things on eviction. We watched your debate, for example, and things like that. I wanted to like kind of get into the nitty gritty and like some of these finer details. And I really appreciate you giving me your answers on those, because I do think there's a lot of things. Now, one question from Mark usually handles the questions. There's one that I heard.
Before you do the question, let me just say that I appreciate you being a devil's advocate. You want to strengthen the thing. However, if you didn't want to be a devil's advocate and you really disagreed and you were polite and let me speak, I would have no problem with that either. But I
100%. But I am evictionist, so that is what it is.
So I appreciate the devil's advocacy, and I think you did a very strong job of pushing me around. So I thank you for that.
I appreciate it. One of the questions I thought was really interesting was, and a couple of audience members were like, "Whoa, this is a big deal." Was the idea that, because we have adopted in this channel, like I think I've spoken with a lot of my community, an idea of safe harbor contracts alongside evictionism, because I do think there are a lot of pro-life people. And so one of the positions we thought, well, if we have a covenant community, like why is it not, we could easily write marriage contracts and things like that with the husband that would say, in the event of a pregnancy, you agree to carry the child, whomever that child is, to term, because you've previously agreed with other people that they have some monetary right to you doing an action and pre-signing a safe harbor contract. But in your explanation, you kind of implied, funnily enough, that there is an implicit contract within safe harbor contracts in and of itself. And I think some people were like, whoa, what does that mean about your argument? Could you maybe go into that a little bit more, and then like a couple other good questions?
Look, I believe that you can alienate your rights. Look, take the host mother. This is really the host mother thing. A couple is infertile, and the husband's sperm works, and the husband makes a deal with the host mother. Hey, take my sperm, whether through sexual intercourse or through some other hospital, whatever, and now you're pregnant. And we're paying you $15,000 to carry that baby to term. Does she have a right to evict the baby? No, because she obligated herself not to. Now take another case. I want to move to a condominium development. I was once in a party with a condominium development, and they were bitching, and they were libertarians. They were bitching about how intrusive the rules are in this condominium safe harbor development. Not only you have to have the same white picket fence, you can't even have a different color drapery than everyone else. And they were going over and saying, complaining about this. And I said, look, shut up. You agreed to this. When you bought that condo, you realized that, not only are they having intrusive rules, but they can even change the rules and make them more intrusive with a majority vote or maybe a supermajority vote. So shut up. So now there's a pro-life condominium. And everyone who buys into that pro-life condominium has to swear up and down that they will not evict. Well, okay, then they can't evict. Fine. But look, I even believe in voluntary slavery. Look,
don't go there again, Walter. Don't go back to involuntary slavery.
Well,
don't you do it.
Oh, okay, I won't do it.
You spicy man.
I believe in alienating rights. If you don't own the right, if you can't sell it, you don't really own it. And you can sell yourself into slavery because you own yourself, and you can sell away the right to evict. But that doesn't mean you don't have it.
All right. Well, I will say this, Dr. Walter Block, it has been lovely having you. Mark, I guess over here, Mark, we'll take a couple of audience questions until you tell us to shut up. We'll bleed you for every second you got if you let us, but we'll try and be as brief as possible. And also, if you ever want to debate me on involuntary slavery, I will take that debate any day. Promise. I love you so much. Mark, bring it away with the out.
Dr. Block, it's been a pleasure having you. Sorry, I'm more the quiet type, so that's why I kind of just sat back. But first, more of a comment because people didn't want to pay attention. And at my account in the Twitch chat,
don't admonish the audience.
Nah, it's not that hard to follow simple instructions. So first thing, when you started, you were talking about Austrian economics. Our good friend Casimir said Austrians make status fraud more easy to detect, thus the condemnation. I just thought you would like to hear that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Austrians make statist fraud more easy to detect?
Yeah, the Austrian economics. The reason why Austrian economics is so like sneered at and derided is because it makes all the statist nonsense more easily noticed.
I see. Yes.
And so they don't like that.
That's a very good point. That the mainstream, the Chicago school and the non-Austrian free enterprisers, they all believe in antitrust. They all believe in market failure. They believe in external public goods, external diseconomies, external economies. They believe in market failure. Mm-hmm. Austrians don't believe in any market failure. So Austrianism makes it a lot easier to oppose government intervention, not so much to detect it, but to oppose it.
Fair enough. So from Red Face Manny, was evictionism inspired by the violinist argument?
No, I have, what's her name? Thompson, I forget her first name. She had the violinist argument. And I thought it was pretty good, but I did write an article attacking her because she's not really an evictionist. She's close. And a lot of people said, well, what's your view on Thompson? And one of my publications is a criticism of hers because she doesn't believe fully in evictionism, but she's pretty good. She's probably the best non-evictionist on evictionism.
Oh, they're saying Judith Jarvis Thompson.
That's it, Judith Jarvis.
That's her name. All right. Yeah, I've read that argument before.
By the way, if any of your audience people want, give them my email address. I'll give it right now. And like they might want to see my article attacking Judith Jarvis Thompson. So my email address is wblock, WBLOCK, at loyno.edu, Louis Oliver Yellow, New Orleans, LOYNO.edu as in education. And while I'm putting in that, I might as well put in a commercial advertisement. I teach at Loyola University. I'm always looking for good students. So if you're a high school student that wants to study with a bunch of free enterprisers, not just me, but my colleagues as well, or if you're a parent or grandparent that has a high school age student or college transfer student who's interested in Loyola University, New Orleans, email me and we'll go from there.
Definitely go there if you actually want an economics class and not some fluff. Alley Cat asked if, you said her, Carrie from your departurism debate, if she ever actually posted her whole argument and if you had a chance to formally review it.
Well, I had a debate with her. It was at the Soho Forum, and I invited her to write it up, and I would reply, but she never got in touch with me.
Sounds like she took that L. Sounds like she took that L, boys.
That is truly a tragedy. They didn't at me, but I feel like they made something of an interesting case. So Isaac Clark says, I see two problems with anyone talking about abortion. One is the claim that human life is inherently valuable, And then in this context, that a new person has to live for some reason. And two, that there is not a set differentiation between humans and everything else for what sets who gets. Okay, sorry, they just trailed off poorly there. I misread that. So just the first part, human life is inherently valuable, and so people have to live.
Well, I don't say human. Well, if I probably said it, and that's my feeling. I think human life is very precious and valuable. Sue me, but I don't. I'm not speaking qua libertarian. As a libertarian, all I can say is that the non-aggression principle and private property rights are our founding axioms or our founding principles, and it is if you murder somebody or you steal, rape, kidnap, engage in fraud, whatever, you're a criminal, and violence should be used against you. I happen to believe that human life is very precious and that the best way to promote human life is through libertarianism. But I don't say that qua libertarian.
I think that's a big misconception with our views is that your mic's open. I'm super quick. I think that's a big misconception. Is something it's very difficult to teach to other people. Is that natural law philosophy is not always a one-to-one with morality, right? I think most deontological systems are pre-modernist kind of Christian or Judeo-Christian or some other form, and so morality kind of like and the ethics and the laws are all attached, and often libertarianism is natural law philosophy as a descriptive legal system and not necessarily what our moral opinions are.
Look, suicide, I think, is immoral, but libertarians are not into morality. We're into legality. And the question comes, is suicide a crime? And I would say it's not a crime because you own yourself. And you have a right to do with yourself whatever you want, including ending your life. And people who commit suicide don't believe that human life is precious because they're giving up on one human life. Look, I don't believe that prostitution is moral, and I don't believe that taking heroin is moral, but it should be legal because it's not a rights violation.
Actually, going with the suicide thing for a moment, if someone jumps off a building, goes however far down, and they land on someone's car, how do we how do we deal with that? Because they're dead. Like they can't. We're not taking a dead body to court.
I hope they had insurance.
Yeah.
Well, no, if they have a car or a house or something, we sue their estate. Namely, they can't give their stuff to their children until their debt to us. Look, our car sustained $20,000 worth of damage because their body fell on it. Well, the first 20,000 of their estate goes to the owner of the car. The rest of it, the suicide can give to his heirs.
All right, wonderful. Now that pesky little loophole is shut. I don't have to. I can easily answer that question if it comes up. This is not related to evictionism, but it is an interesting question about spreading the liberty message from Shadowboy TV. In what ways should libertarians spread the idea of liberty? Should libertarians focus on making easily distributables like pamphlets or long intellectual books and essays? Which do you think will make the message more mainstream?
Well, my advice to libertarians as to how they should promote liberty is whatever is the most fun. Some people like writing books or long articles in a law review or a scholarly journal. Other people like writing an op-ed. Some people like writing letters to the editor. Then there's this group called, what is it called? Free State Project, where everyone should go to New Hampshire and we'll make New Hampshire great and it'll show as a model for every other state. There's seasteading, setting up a libertarian group in the ocean. There's, I don't know, think tanks where they have conferences, Cato Institute, Reason, Mises Institute, Independent Institute. I think every state in the country has a free market think tank. For example, in my home state of Louisiana, there's the Pelican Institute. So there are many, and look, Ayn Rand wrote novels, and she converted more people to libertarianism than pretty much anyone else, with the possible exception of Ron Paul, who did so as a politician. So, there's a libertarian Libertarian Party. There are many ways to promote liberty, and everyone should do their promotion in the way that they enjoy the most, because we're supposed to have fun as libertarians. Libertarians are supposed to be enjoyable. And if we're not enjoying ourselves, we're going to burn out and we'll stop being libertarians, or at least stop promoting liberty. So my advice is to do whatever is the most fun way of promoting liberty.
I want to say
Ayn Rand is probably rolling in her grave.
I want to say
that
yeah, she hates libertarians, but I want to say personally that I'm deeply offended that you didn't mention the streamers that tell dick jokes and debate lefties online.
Yeah, yes, what you're doing now is a perfect example, and I'm an idiot for not mentioning it. And
how dare you? How dare you?
I stand corrected. One last question.
Okay,
Wonderful.
One last one. Make it a good one.
I saved Casimir's question for last. He's rephrased it, so I'll go with the rephrase. What is the consequence of the host mother declaring she wants to evict? Can she be held in stasis to prevent her damaging the baby? Or is she imprisoned? Oh, okay, no, he just... All right, no, that's the whole question.
Well, real quick, he's taking in reference to a previously signed like safe harbor contract. So like in the apartment example that you gave, where eviction would be legal, what would be the restitution there? Can she be held confined to be forced to birth?
I believe in specific performance contracts. I'm in an ongoing debate with my buddy Stefan Kinsella, who I regard as a great libertarian theoretician, and I think he's wrong on this. He would say the only thing you can do to this host mother that evicts is take away her money, or if she posted a bond, take that money away. I say no. Yes, you can do that, but you can compel her to live up to a contract. And if she's about to go to a doctor and get an eviction, you stop her physically, and you do whatever it takes. You tie her up and tie her in a bed, or I don't know how you stop her for 9 months, but you stop her for 9 months because she's got your child inside of her, and not only should she not evict in the first 2 trimesters, but she shouldn't even evict in the 3rd trimester, because we paid for 9 months of work, and we're going to get 9 months of work out of her. And so I think Stefan Kinsella is very wrong in saying, well, there's a limit to what you can do, and you got to let her get away with it, and then you penalize her or put her in jail afterward. No. You do that, but you also stop her.
Thank you so much for coming. You know, we had some... Your mic's open. You had some technical issues. You know, we're used to using Discord. We couldn't quite get that figured out. I've got to force myself, if I'm going to get people on Discord in the future that have not used it before, to do like a test dry run first. Because sometimes there's issues occur, and I just assume that everyone's like a millennial or Gen Z and they just figure it out instantly. Regardless, you're a big inspiration to me. You know, I hope to read more of your work. You know, I can't wait to see what you're passionate about today and what you've got coming in the future. You know, long live Dr. Walter Block. It'll be a sad day when there's no more Walter Block to read. But I'm not there yet. And so thank you so much for coming on. And also thank you for coming to Twitch, in the Twitch politics space. It's a weird platform, live streaming, but it's been a pleasure having you.
Pleasure being with you, and I look forward in a couple of months to do it again on a different subject. I greatly enjoyed it. Take care, guys.
Thank you for your time, sir.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.